Prostrations to Ramana, who shines as the self in all beings. We begin today's satsang with the prayer by Srimati Sapna Ganesh, followed by Muktakatrayam by Sri Nandakumarji and Upadesha Saram by Ashwini Balaji and Uma Shripati.
दक्षिणामूर्तिसारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमां रमणाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् शुक्लाम्बरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये आङ्गिकं भुवनं यस्य वाचिकं सर्ववाङ्मयम् आहार्यं चन्द्रतारादि तं नमः सात्विकं शिवम् ॐ नमो भगवते श्रीरमणाय। नमो रमणा to everyone.
एकम् अक्षरम् हृदि निरन्तरम् भासते स्वयं लिख्यते कथम् हृदयकुहर मध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहम् इति साक्षात् आत्मरूपेण भाति। हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वता मज्जता वा पवनचलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। देहं मृण्मयवत् जडात्मकम् अहं बुद्धिर्न तस्यास्त्यतो नाहं तत्तत भावशुक्तिसमये सिद्धात्मसद्भावतः। कोऽहं भावयुतः कुतो वरधिया दृष्टात्मनिष्टात्मना सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचल शिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं। सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचल शिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं। नमो रमण।
नमो रमण। कर्तुराज्ञया प्राप्यते फलं कर्म किं परं कर्म तज्जडं कृतिमहो दधौ पतनकारणं फलमशाश्वतं गतिनिरोधकम् ईश्वरार्पितं नेच्छया कृतं चित्तशोधकं मुक्तिसाधकम् कायवाग्मना कार्यमुत्तमम् पूजनं जप चिन्तनं क्रमात् जगत ईषधी युक्तसेवनम् अष्टमूर्तिभृद्देवपूजनम् उत्तमस्तवादुच्चमन्दत चित्तजं जप ध्यानमुत्तमम् आज्यधारया स्रोतसा समम् सरलचिन्तनं विरलतः परम् भेदभावनात् सोऽहमित्यसौ भावनाभिदा पावनीमत भावशून्य सद्भावसुस्थिति भावना बलात् भक्तिरुत्तमा हृत्स्थले मना स्वस्थता क्रिया भक्तियोगबोधाशनिश्चितम्। नमो रमण।
Namo Ramana. We now have the Ramananjali musical sharings. It will be by Radha, followed by Pratibha, then Savitri and Jayashrira, and the last offering for today will be by Revati Shankar.
Namo Ramana. I'll be singing a song in Hindi. The original lyrics is by Satyamangalam Venkatrama Iyer, and it is being translated by Saraswati Deepak Kumar Deepak, and the music is by P.S. Dikshit. जय जय रमण महर्षि महान, 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 जय जय रमण महर्षि महान। दूर दूर कर दिया हृदय से, दूर दूर कर दिया हृदय से मेरा सब अज्ञान, मेरा सब अज्ञान। दूर दूर कर दिया हृदय से मेरा सब अज्ञान। जय जय रमण महर्षि महान, जय जय रमण महर्षि महान। जगाओ जन जन मन में ज्ञान, जगाओ जन जन मन में ज्ञान, जगाओ जन जन मन में ज्ञान। जय जय रमण महर्षि महान, जय जय रमण महर्षि महान। बना दो जीवन को वरदान, बना दो जीवन को वरदान, बना दो जीवन को वरदान। जय जय रमण महर्षि महान, जय जय रमण महर्षि महान। कराते अमृत रस का पान, कराते अमृत रस का पान, कराते अमृत रस का पान। जय जय रमण महर्षि महान, जय जय रमण महर्षि महान। रहा मैं कितने दिन अनजान, रहा मैं कितने दिन अनजान, रहा मैं कितने दिन अनजान। जय जय रमण महर्षि महान, जय जय रमण महर्षि महान, जय जय रमण महर्षि महान, जय जय रमण महर्षि महान। दूर दूर कर दिया हृदय से मेरा सब अज्ञान, दूर दूर कर दिया हृदय से मेरा सब अज्ञान। जय जय रमण महर्षि महान। जगाओ जन जन मन में ज्ञान, जय जय रमण महर्षि महान। बना दो जीवन को वरदान, जय जय रमण महर्षि महान। कराते अमृत रस का पान, जय जय रमण महर्षि महान। रहा मैं कितने दिन अनजान, जय जय रमण महर्षि महान। जय जय रमण महर्षि महान, जय जय रमण महर्षि महान, जय जय रमण महर्षि महान, जय जय रमण महर्षि महान। नमो रमण।
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. It was Deepotsavam in Tiruvannamalai on November 19th, 1945. Lord Arunachaleshwara was being taken in procession around the hill. When it reached the ashram gate, Arati was done and was brought to Bhagwan. He applied vibhuti to his forehead and said, "Appakku pillai adakkam." Son is beholden to the father. Suri Nagamma describes this in the letters from Sri Ramanashramam and says it reminded her of this ancient saying, Bhakti Purnataya Jnanam. The culmination of devotion is knowledge. Bhagwan is verily the epitome of that absolute devotion and surrender to Arunachala. In fact, Shardaka has brought out this so beautifully in her editorial of August issue of Ramana Way, and I really hope that everybody has got to read that. Bhagwan reveals to us what the true devotion and total surrender is in all of his songs of glory of Arunachala. His love for Arunachala pours out in these verses of Navamani Malai, the necklet of 9 gems. Bhagwan says, Annamalai, once you claimed me, my body and soul as yours, is there anything that I lack? All merits and demerits are yours alone. Do unto me what pleases you. Lord, grant me only increasing love for you. With prayers to Arunachala Ramana to help us to hold him, to love him and surrender to him totally, my humble attempt to sing these beautiful verses from Navamani Malai in Telugu, translated by Y.V. Venkateshwar Rao, and music set by Dr. S. Rajeshwar Rao. అన్నామలయని పిలచిన క్షణమున వశపరచుకొంటివి తను మనముల. 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 నిన్ను నమ్మిన నాకే లోటున్నది, నిన్ను నమ్మిన నాకే లోటున్నది. ఏమున్నది నే కోరవలసినది, ఏమున్నది నే కోరవలసినది. అన్నామలయని పిలచిన క్షణమున వశపరచుకొంటివి తను మనముల. ఏది సుగుణమో ఏది దోషమో నీవు వినా నేనన్యమెరుంగను. ఏది సుగుణమో ఏది దోషమో నీవు వినా నేనన్యమెరుంగను. నీవే నా సర్వము ప్రాణము, నీ పాదములే నాకు శరణ్యము. నీవే నా సర్వము ప్రాణము, నీ పాదములే నాకు శరణ్యము. అన్నామలయని పిలచిన క్షణమున వశపరచుకొంటివి తను మనముల. అన్నామలయని పిలచిన క్షణమున వశపరచుకొంటివి తను మనముల. అన్నామలై అన్నామలై. నమో నమః.
ಅರುಣಗಿರಿ ನಿಂತಿಗುದು ಜಡದ ರೀತಿ, ತಿಳಿಯರಾರು ಅದರ ಕಾರ್ಯನೀತಿ. ಅರುಣಗಿರಿ ನಿಂತಿಗುದು ಜಡದ ರೀತಿ, ತಿಳಿಯರಾರು ಅದರ ಕಾರ್ಯನೀತಿ. ಬಾಲ್ಯದಿಂದಲೂ ಬಿಡದೆ ಮನಸ್ಸಿನೊಳಗೆ ಹೊಳೆಯುತ್ತಲೇ ಇತ್ತೆನ್ನ ಪ್ರಜ್ಞೆಯೊಳಗೆ. ಬಾಲ್ಯದಿಂದಲೂ ಬಿಡದೆ ಮನಸ್ಸಿನೊಳಗೆ ಹೊಳೆಯುತ್ತಲೇ ಇತ್ತೆನ್ನ ಪ್ರಜ್ಞೆಯೊಳಗೆ. ಅರುಣಗಿರಿಯಂದು ಅದ ತಿಳಿದ ಮೇಲೂ ಅದರ ಮಹಿಮೆಯ ಮಾತ್ರ ತಿಳಿಯದಾದೆ. ಅರುಣಗಿರಿ ನಿಂತಿರುವುದು ಜಡದ ರೀತಿ, ತಿಳಿಯರಾರು ಅದರ ಕಾರ್ಯನೀತಿ. ನನ್ನ ಕರೆಸಿದೆ ಕಡೆಗೂ ನಿನ್ನ ಬಳಿಗೆ, ಸ್ತಬ್ಧವಾಗಿದೆ ಚಲನೆ ಮನಸ್ಸಿನೊಳಗೆ. ನನ್ನ ಕರೆಸಿದೆ ಕಡೆಗೂ ನಿನ್ನ ಬಳಿಗೆ, ಸ್ತಬ್ಧವಾಗಿದೆ ಚಲನೆ ಮನಸ್ಸಿನೊಳಗೆ. ನಿನ್ನಡಿಗೆ ಬಂದು ನಾ ಕಣ್ಣ ತೆರೆದೆ, ಪರಿಪೂರ್ಣ ನಿಶ್ಚಲನ ರೂಪ ತಿಳಿದೆ. ಅರುಣಗಿರಿ ನಿಂತಿರುವುದು ಜಡದ ರೀತಿ, ತಿಳಿಯರಾರು ಅದರ ಕಾರ್ಯನೀತಿ. ನೋಡ ನೋಡುತ್ತ ನಾನೇ ಅಳಿದು ಹೋದೆ, ಆಲೋಚನೆಯ ಮೂಲ ಹರಿದು ಬೀಳೆ. ನೋಡ ನೋಡುತ್ತ ನಾನೇ ಅಳಿದು ಹೋದೆ, ಆಲೋಚನೆಯ ಮೂಲ ಹರಿದು ಬೀಳೆ. ನಾನೆನ್ನುವ ಭಾವವೇ ಮೂಡದಲ್ಲಿ, ಕಂಡೆ ಕಾಣೆ ಎನ್ನಲು ಅರ್ಥವೆಲ್ಲಿ. ಅರುಣಗಿರಿ ನಿಂತಿರುವುದು ಜಡದ ರೀತಿ, ತಿಳಿಯರಾರು ಅದರ ಕಾರ್ಯನೀತಿ. ಅರುಣಗಿರಿ ನಿಂತಿರುವುದು ಜಡದ ರೀತಿ, ತಿಳಿಯರಾರು ಅದರ ಕಾರ್ಯನೀತಿ. ತಿಳಿಯರಾರು ಅದರ ಕಾರ್ಯನೀತಿ, ತಿಳಿಯರಾರು ಅದರ ಕಾರ್ಯನೀತಿ.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. We are meditating on the 11th verse of Saddarshanam. Bodharamatmanamajanato yo bodhah sakim syat paramarthabodhah bodhasya bodhyasya cha samshayam swam vijanatastadvitayam vinashyet. Can knowledge of everything without self-knowledge be true knowledge? Awareness of the self, which is the support of knower and known, destroys the pair, knowledge and ignorance. When we buy a mobile phone for about 15,000 or 20,000, we check all the specs or so many times. Even 100 rupee vegetable when we are buying, we check each one of the vegetable, each fruit when we buy. But do we check who we are at all? Do we inquire who we are? We live with this I the whole of our life. Do we really check that? Do we inquire? Without inquiry, we just keep living with this so comfortably. My name, my body, nothing I know. But the knowledge of the world is so real for me, and this is Maya. So for us, the main goal of life is to know the self. I'm presenting a song by Sadhu Om Swami, Kannada translation by R.N. Jayagopal, music by V.S. Narasimhan. ಕರುಣಿಸಿದ ವರ ಕರುಣಿಸಿದ ಕರುಣಿಸಿದ ವರ ಕರುಣಿಸಿದ ತಂದೆ ರಮಣ ಮನ ಬೆಳಗಿಸಿದ ಕರುಣಿಸಿದ ವರ ಕರುಣಿಸಿದ ತಂದೆ ರಮಣ ಮನ ಬೆಳಗಿಸಿದ ಕರುಣಿಸಿದ ವರ ಕರುಣಿಸಿದ ಈ ಜಗವೆಲ್ಲ ಮಾಯೆಯ ಕನಸು ಅಜ್ಞಾನದ ತೆರೆ ನೀ ಸರಿಸು ಈ ಜಗವೆಲ್ಲ ಮಾಯೆಯ ಕನಸು ಅಜ್ಞಾನದ ತೆರೆ ನೀ ಸರಿಸು ನಾನು ಎಂಬುದು ದೇಹವದಲ್ಲ ನಾನು ಎಂಬುದು ದೇಹವದಲ್ಲ ಸಮಾಧಿ ಸ್ಥಿತಿಯೆಡೆ ಮನಹರಿಸು ಕರುಣಿಸಿದ ವರ ಕರುಣಿಸಿದ ತಂದೆ ರಮಣ ಮನ ಬೆಳಗಿಸಿದ ಕರುಣಿಸಿದ ವರ ಕರುಣಿಸಿದ ಏನೂ ಅರಿಯದ ಈ ಸೇವಕನ ತನ್ನೆಡೆ ಕರೆಯಿಸಿ ಅವನೊಲಿದ ಏನೂ ಅರಿಯದ ಈ ಸೇವಕನ ತನ್ನೆಡೆ ಕರೆಯಿಸಿ ಅವನೊಲಿದ ಮನದ ಕಂಗಳು ಕಾಣಲು ಅವನು ಶಾಂತಿಯ ಸುಧೆಯನ್ನು ಅವ ತೋರಿದ ಕರುಣಿಸಿದ ವರ ಕರುಣಿಸಿದ ತಂದೆ ರಮಣ ಮನ ಬೆಳಗಿಸಿದ ಕರುಣಿಸಿದ ವರ ಕರುಣಿಸಿದ ದೇಹದಿಮ್ಮಾತ್ಮವ ಪ್ರತ್ಯೇಕ ಮಾಡಲು ಶಕ್ತಿಯು ಸಾಲದೆ ದಣಿದಿರಲು ದೇಹದಿಮ್ಮಾತ್ಮವ ಪ್ರತ್ಯೇಕ ಮಾಡಲು ಶಕ್ತಿಯು ಸಾಲದೆ ದಣಿದಿರಲು ರಮಣರ ವಾಣಿಯು ನೀಡಿತು ಚೇತನ ರಮಣರ ವಾಣಿಯು ನೀಡಿತು ಚೇತನ ಹರಿತು ನೂತನ ಸಂಜೀವನ ಕರುಣಿಸಿದ ವರ ಕರುಣಿಸಿದ ತಂದೆ ರಮಣ ಮನ ಬೆಳಗಿಸಿದ ಕರುಣಿಸಿದ ವರ ಕರುಣಿಸಿದ. ನಮೋ ರಮಣ.
Namo Ramana. We now have the reading and the sharing by Sri Nandakumarji.
Namo Ramana. We continue to read from the first meetings with Ramana Maharshi, first person accounts, edited and compiled by our founder president, Sri A.R. Natarajanji. We have come to the account of Arthur Osborne entitled The Revelation. It was shortly before the World War, the Second World War. Am I audible? It was shortly before the Second World War that some friends sent me pictures of Bhagwan, Sri Ramana, and copies of some of his books. Under the influence of the French writer René Guénon, who was reinterpreting forgotten spiritual traditions to the West, I had the one self or pure being, and that I, in my essence, am identical with the self. I'll read that again. I had already understood that all beings manifest the one self or pure being, and that I, in my essence, am identical with the self. This means that it is possible to realize this supreme identity and become one in very fact, and that the purpose of life is to do so. Until this is achieved, the illusion of separate life in one form or another must continue, and with its sufferings and frustration, obscure the radiance of the pure being. I knew that this task was the great heroic quest, the quest of the Sangh, Holy Grail. That is the spiritual tradition in Christianity in search of the immortal cup, that was from which some special activity goes on in Easter. So that is, I knew that this task was great heroic quest, the quest of the Sangh, Holy Grail, and Golden Fleece. That is a Greek tradition, and that it required constant effort on a prescribed path under the guidance of a guru. I was making efforts to find and follow such a path, but people for whom I had utmost respect had assured me that Bhagwan was not a guru, and that his teaching, however sublime, did not constitute practical guidance on a path that men could follow. I was enormously impressed by the books and pictures, by the spiritual power and beauty in them, but classed them reluctantly as a luxury rather than a utility. In any case, I could not have gone to Tiruvannamalai because I was at the time a university lecturer in Siam. Siam, of course, is Thailand today. Soon, however, it became possible. In 1941, I had 6 months leave, which I spent in India. And yet, I did not go. I accepted the view impressed upon me that less aspiring effort was more practicable, less illumined guidance more effective. In September, when my leave ended, the war was already drawing near to Siam. So I left my wife and 3 children in India and went back alone. A friend had kindly opened to them, that is his wife and 3 children. A friend had kindly opened to them his house at Tiruvannamalai, the only place where my wife wished to be. She was more concerned with reality than I. She was less concerned with theory. I went back without seeing Bhagwan. In December, the Japanese invaded Siam and I was arrested and interned. Just before that, I had received a letter saying that my eldest daughter, then aged 5, and my son, 3 years younger, had asked Bhagwan to keep me safe through the war. And he had smiled and assented. There followed 3.5 long years of internment and until the Japanese surrender in 1945. There was ample time for sadhana. More and more, Bhagavan became the support of my strivings, though I did not yet turn to him as to the Guru. As soon as the evacuation could be arranged, I went to Tiruvannamalai, arriving there at the beginning of October, and yet it was not as much to rejoin my family as to see Bhagavan that I went. Perhaps it would be more true to say that I simply felt I had to go there. I entered the ashram hall on the morning of my arrival, before Bhagavan had returned from his daily walk on the hill. I was a little odd to find AWED, not ODD. I was a little odd to find how small it was and how close to him I would be sitting. I had expected something grander and less intimate. And then Bhagavan entered. And to my surprise, there was no great impression. Certainly far less than his photographs had made. Just a white-haired, very gracious man, walking a little stiffly from rheumatism and with a slight stoop. As soon as he had eased himself onto the couch, he smiled at me and then turned to those around and to my young son and said, "So, Adam's prayer has been answered. His daddy has come back safely." This is Adam Osborne, who later invents the laptop. So, Adam's prayer has been answered. His daddy has come back safely. I felt his kindness, but no more. I appreciated that it was for my sake that he had spoken English, since Adam knew Tamil. During the weeks that followed, he was constantly gracious to me, and the strain of nerves and mind gradually relaxed. And there was still no dynamic contact. I was disappointed, as it seemed to show a lack of receptivity in me. And yet, at the same time, it did confirm the opinion I had accepted that he was not a guru and did not give guidance in any path. And Bhagavan said nothing to change my view. It was not until the evening of Kartikai, when each year a beacon is lit on the summit of Arunachala, or it may have been Deepavali, I am not quite sure, when a revelation occurred. There were huge crowds for the festival. I was sitting in the courtyard outside the old hall, in front of the couch where Bhagavan was reclining. He sat up, facing me, and his narrowed eyes pierced into me, penetrating, intimate, and with an intensity I cannot describe. It was as though they said, "You have been told. Why have you not realized?" And then quietness, a depth of peace, an indescribable lightness and happiness. Thereafter, love for Bhagavan began to grow in my heart, and I felt his power and beauty. Next morning, for the first time, sitting before him in the hall, I tried to follow his teaching by using the vichara, "Who am I?" I thought it was I who had decided. I did not at first realize that it was the initiation by look that had vitalized me and had changed my attitude of mind. Indeed, I had heard only vaguely of this initiation and paid little heed to what I had heard. Only later did I learn that other devotees also had such an experience, and that with them also it had marked the beginning of active sadhana under Bhagavan's guidance. My love and devotion to Bhagavan deepened. I went about with a lilt of happiness in my heart, feeling the blessing and mystery of the Guru, repeating like a song of love that he was the Guru, and the link between heaven and earth, between God and me, between the formless being and my heart. I became aware of the enormous grace of his presence. Even outwardly, he was gracious to me, smiling when I entered the hall, signing to me to sit where he could watch me in meditation. And then, one day, a sudden vivid reminder awoke in me. The link with formless being? But he is the formless being. And I began to apprehend the meaning of his jnana and to understand why devotees addressed him simply as Bhagavan, which is the word meaning God. So he began to prove in me what he declared in his teachings, that the outer guru serves to awaken the guru in the heart. The vichara, the constant who am I, began to evoke an awareness of the self as Bhagavan outwardly and also simultaneously of the self within. The specious theory that Bhagavan was not a guru had simply evaporated in the radiance of his grace. Moreover, I now perceived that so far from his teachings not being practical guidance, it was exclusively practical guidance. It was exclusively that. I observed that he shunned theoretical explanations and kept turning the questioner to practical considerations of sadhana, of the path to be followed. It was that and that only that he was here to teach. I wrote and explained this to the people who had misinformed me, and before sending the letter, showed it to Bhagavan for his approval. He approved and handed it back, bidding me send it. Daily, I sat in the hall before him. I asked no questions, for the theory had long been understood. I spoke to him only very occasionally about some personal matter, but the silent guidance was continuous, strong, and subtle. It may seem strange to modern minds, but the Guru taught in silence. This did not mean that he was unwilling to explain when asked. Indeed, he would answer sincere questions fully. What it meant was that the real teaching was not the explanation, but the silent influence, the alchemy worked in the heart. I strove constantly by way of the vichara, according to his instructions. Having a strong sense of duty or obligation, I continued side by side with it to use other forms of sadhana which I had undertaken before coming to Bhagavan, even though I now found them burdensome and unhelpful. Finally, I told Bhagavan of my predicament and asked whether I could abandon them. He assented, explaining that all other methods only lead up to vichara. From the moment of my arrival at Tiruvannamalai, there had been no question of my leaving again. This was home. Even at the very beginning, when I was so mistaken about Bhagavan, even when material prospects seemed bleak. Perhaps that was why Bhagavan in his graciousness bestowed the initiation on one who sought but had not the wit to ask. This period of constant physical proximity lasted up to the beginning of 1948. I had never been in a financial position to make me suppose I should be able to spend nearly 3 years at an ashram, but circumstances adapt themselves to the will of Bhagavan. But circumstances adapt themselves to the will of Bhagavan. Not only did His grace keep me there, but it enabled me to go through the long period of unemployment and other trials and bereavement due to undue anxiety, without undue anxiety. Although he never spoke of my difficulties or misfortunes, he flooded my heart with peace. Early in 1948, constant physical proximity had ceased to be necessary and professional work had become urgently necessary. Work was found in Madras. I took with me a life-size photograph of Bhagwan painted over in oils, a gift from Dr. T.N. Krishnaswamy, a devotee and photographer. I showed it to Bhagwan before leaving, and he took it in his hands and returned it, saying, he is taking Swami with him. Since then, the photo has looked at me with love and compassion of a guru and spoken more profoundly than all the other portraits. Thereafter, I went to Tiruvannamalai only for weekends and holidays, and each visit was revitalizing. I was there at the time of one of the operations that Bhagavan suffered and had darshan immediately after it, and the graciousness of his reception melted the heart and awoke remorse to think how great was the reward for so little an effort that was made. I was there on that fateful April night of the body's death and felt a calm beneath the grief and a wonder at the fortitude Bhagavan had implanted in his devotees to bear their loss. Gradually, one after another began to discover in his heart the truth that Bhagavan had not gone away, but as he promised, he is still here. Since that day, his presence in the heart has been more vital, the outpouring of grace more abundant, his support more powerful. The grace that emanates from the tomb is the grace of the living Ramana. Since that day, his presence in the heart has been more vital, the outpouring of grace more abundant, his support more powerful. The grace that emanates from the tomb is the grace of the living Ramana. During these years, I had felt no urge to write about Bhagavan. After his body's death and his assurance, I am not going away, I am here. Where could I go? There was a dream in which he called me up to him, and as I knelt before his couch, he placed his hands on my head in blessing. At this time, an impulse came to write about Bhagavan, and especially to explain the accessibility of the path of self-inquiry which he taught. And Ganeshanana writes that Arthur Osborne is the best exponent of Bhagavan's teachings in English. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramana. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. We now have the self-inquiry session conducted by Dilip Sinha.
Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Dhyaye Sharada Chandra Sundara Mukam Tamra Ravinde Kshanam Bhakta Vishthavara Bhayapradakaram Kaupinamathrojvalam Svatmanandarasanubhuti vivasham Sarvanavadyangakam Shrimantam Shri Ramaneshwaram Guruvaram Yogasanadhyasitam Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Hridaya Kuhara Madhye Kevalam Brahmamatram Yahamaham Sakshat Atmarupena Bhati Hridi Vishamanasa Swam Chingvata Majjatava Pavana Chalanarodha Atmanishto Bhavatvam. We commence the Atma Vichara session by listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham. We've been blessed to read from Talk 481. Murugana Swami asked what Pragnana is. Bhagavan said, Pragnana, absolute knowledge, is that from which Vijnana, relative knowledge, proceeds. I repeat, Pragnana, absolute knowledge, is that from which Vijnana, relative knowledge, proceeds. Bhagavan is saying here that all relative knowledge, including the knowledge if there is something like I know the self, is also a relative knowledge. Therefore, the pragnana, the absolute knowledge, knows itself and there is nothing for it to claim against anybody. So, in that pragnana, there is no division, no duality, and no claim in that. In that absolute knowledge, if at all, if there is a claim, then there is vijnana, relative knowledge. All knowledge is relative, apart from the absolute knowing itself. In that pure mauna, everything else is relative, and therefore it is all part of vijnana. So Bhagavan is saying that our real nature is of that of pragnana. We are the foundation on which everything else relatively built. The self, which we are here and now, is the only thing which is there, and everything else is relative upon it. And in the self, there is nothing relative. It is absolute. It is full, whole and complete. So the relative knowledge only appears in the form of a thought or an idea or a concept. And Bhagavan says, whenever it rises, imminently there is an I behind it, a first division that has taken place. And Bhagavan says this I is an identity. All identity is binding on the absolute, where there is absolutely no binding. And therefore Bhagavan comes with the freedom. With the question, who am I? He brings the freedom. To whom is this thought? And thereupon, when we inquire diligently, we become aware that it is for me. When we inquire, who am I? Then we recognize that we are that absolute knowledge. And this relative knowledge had made us bind to this name and form. And therefore, it gives us an opportunity to let go that relative and get back to our absolute state of knowledge. And with repeated practice, Bhagavan assures that the mind will gain enough strength to remain at the absolute itself, recognizing that all relative knowledge is binding. And in the absolute, there is no binding, hence only freedom. With the immense grace of Bhagavan, for the next 10 minutes, let us do Atma Vichara. Bhagavate Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. We have the sharing by Sri Venkatesh Deshpande.
Vasudeva Satam Devam Kansachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Om Shantakaram Bhujagashayanam Padmanabham Suresham Vishwadharam Gaganasudrisham Meghavarnam Shubhangam Lakshmi Kantam Kamalaнаянam Yogihriddhyanagамyam Vande Vishnum Bhavaiharanam Sarvalokaikkanatham. Om. We're doing Manana on Bhagavad Gita Saram, the verses chosen by Bhagavan from Bhagavad Gita. So we had done up till verse number 11, and the broad inputs that Bhagavan Shri Krishna had said about the Absolute is, one is that it is indwelling in the hearts of all beings. Number two is, very important, is the self. The next few verses, many verses, is all about the self, that the self is incapable of being pierced, burned by fire or wetted. It is imperishable. It pervades everything. It never ceases to exist. It cannot be contaminated by the objects that are there. And the people who once reach it do not return to this earth. So these were the broad inputs that we got from the first 11 verses. So we will do the 12th verse now. I request Sapna to chant them, please.
Yes, sir. अथ भगवद्गीता सारः अव्यक्तोऽक्षर इत्युक्तस्तमाहुः परमां गतिं यं प्राप्य न निवर्तन्ते तद्धाम परमं मम अव्यक्तोऽक्षर इत्युक्तस्तमाहुः परमां गतिं यं प्राप्य न निवर्तन्ते तद्धाम परमं मम.
Thank you, Sapna. The one who is spoken of as unmanifest, as also imperishable, is called the supreme goal. That again is my Lord's supreme abode, after reaching which people do not return to their world anymore. So Shri Krishna is, in the last 7-8 verses, has been talking about the supreme goal, the supreme abode, and and it is constantly reminding us that the universe is subject to cycles of creation and dissolution, and that unless we take effort, we are stuck in this infinite cycle. So this is an important thing that Shri Krishna keeps saying, And Bhagwan also says this based on the Upadesha he gives his mother, that based on Prarabdha, whatever is to happen will happen. But we all know that the Prarabdha is for the body, but right now, most of us are stuck with this body. So we are going through this infinite cycle of the creation and dissolution. So Sri Krishna reiterates the need for the pursuit of Ishvara as the means of liberation. So today being Saturday, I thought I will just, from Hanuman Chalisa, I will just read a few lines. नासे रोग हरे सब पीड़ा जपत निरंतर हनुमत बीरा संकट कटे मिटे सब पीड़ा जो सुमिरे हनुमत बलबीरा. So Hanumanji in Hanuman Chalisa, they also say the same thing, that the sankat or the pida is that all of us are in is this ego, is this embodied, this body, this mind, this intellect that we are stuck in. So therefore, for the seeker who performs karma yoga and upasana or devotion towards Ishvara, attains Ishvara. After he has completed his time on earth. So what is important here is that we need to finish our accounts. Now, unless we finish our accounts, then only we can file our accounts. So, many of us, even Nand Kumar, who's an expert in accounts, all of us know, first of all, there is a balance between credit and debit. And when there is a perfect balance, then only you can submit the accounts. So similarly here, what Sri Krishna is trying to say is that when you have completed your account is perfectly matched and there is nothing more, no more ichhas, there are no more desires and there are no more vasanas, then you do not come back to this earth. So coming back to the verse, the avyakta, that's what the unmanifest, and the akshara, the indestructible, is the resplendent Supreme Lord, Krishna himself, upon whom attaining there is no more returning to samsara, the perpetual cycle of birth and death. So we all are striving for this coming out of the cycle of birth and death. See, if you look at our lives, there are some things if I ask each one of us, do you believe you are a human being? There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that even if somebody wakes me up anytime and asks me, are you a human being? I say yes. Are you a man or a woman? I would say whatever I am, whoever I am. Are you this body? Yes. When it hurts or is very happy, we know we are this body. But if somebody asks you, you are divine, Tattvamasi, you are that, what happens? We say, why? We are not that. So at least in the most of the Indians, what they do is they keep names. Like my parents kept my name as Venkatesh. Why do they keep it as Venkatesh? Because constant reminding, whenever they call you, they say Venkatesh, Venkatesh, Venkatesh. They think, oh my God, someday he'll probably realize that he's that, all-pervading self, or the God is within, that Venkatesh actually is within him. So that's why they keep God's name. So the yoga that we do, karma yoga, bhakti yoga, whatever yoga we do, what do we mean by yoga? Yoga is the union of the individual consciousness with the supreme consciousness. So all of us are actually doing yoga. When we are actually doing Shravana, Manana and Nididhyasana, when we are actually doing self-inquiry, or we are doing surrender to the Lord, we are actually doing yoga. We are trying to, maybe when you do Hatha Yoga, you are trying to do pranayama and quieten the thoughts, by which you will experience the individual consciousness merging into the supreme consciousness. And that's what in the gurukuls they used to do earlier. When you keep on doing that, and when you stop being bahirmukha and you become antarmukha, then when you are ready to take the input from your guru, he will say tattvamasi, you are that. See, there are some things that we cannot see within us. Like, say for example, blood is within us. Blood is flowing continuously within our body. Can we see it? We really cannot see it. But when there's a hurt, it shows. When there's a hurt in the body, the blood shows up. So similarly, when we, Sankat Bandre Venkatramana, they say, similarly, when we actually have sankat, when we have problems, we pray to the Lord. And I always used to have this thing is, where is the maximum prayer that happens? Nowadays, if you really see, there's one thing that's happening. The one part is that there are many bodies leaving this surface of the earth because of corona, but the intensity, the highest intensity of prayers actually happens in hospitals, not in temples. Temples, we are actually begging. We are begging for worldly things, and but in when you are in a hospital, you are actually praying intensely to God to save your relative or your friend or whatever it is. So right now, if you see that the whole world, there is a lot of prayer going on. There's a lot of prayer going on. That's the positive side that we have to see from a corona perspective. People are praying so that the loved ones all have longer lives on the surface of the earth. So the guru, what he does, the guru pushes, like what Dilip was saying, the guru pushes you from outside. And guru is the same guru also pulls you from inside. He's telling you, hey, don't loiter around in this world. This world is actually a film show. There's nothing true about it. It is all, this film show is going to end someday. So be with me. So important thing is to this merging of the self individual consciousness into the supreme consciousness. And in Ramana Maharshi, we have time and again, we have seen this beautiful dance drama, which is where the Ganga Maiya goes and merges into the Bay of Bengal. The Ganga Maiya has a huge, it's so powerful, it's so pure, and everybody prays to it. And when she actually merges into Bay of Bengal, what happens to Ganga Maiya? Nobody calls it Ganga Maiya anymore. It is the Bay of Bengal. So similarly, when your individual consciousness merges with the supreme consciousness, your individuality is no more there. You are that supreme consciousness. When you are the supreme consciousness, then everything is only that supreme consciousness. You are not there anymore. So that's what in this verse that we're trying to understand, that the avyakta is the Supreme Lord Himself. It shows the use of the word Dhamma or abode as also denoting this resplendent form of the Supreme Lord, showing that the resplendent Supreme Lord's form and abode are both indicators, such as that it is understood to be those who have attained the spiritual wisdom. Now, again, the important thing to understand here is that Who has understood this, seen this resplendent supreme Lord? So there have been people who have, and sages and saints and gurus who've actually done great tapasya and have got this spiritual wisdom. So they're trying to say here in this verse is that as the supreme being is the only reality, he is imperishable. He is also the self of all beings. Supreme happiness can be attained only by the realization of the self, who is also the supreme Brahman. So this is a very important aspect, is what are we trying to, we are having satsang every day, twice or thrice a day. What are we trying to achieve? We are trying to get to supreme happiness, unalloyed supreme happiness, where there is no wanting of anything which is there in this world. When there's no wanting of anything that is there in this world, then what you are contented with whatever you have. When you're contented with whatever you have, your mind stops going outside. When the mind stops going outside, there are no more vrittis, there are no more movements in the mind. When there are no more movements in the mind, then the mind is actually within. The mind can actually go within and start doing contemplation of who you are. So all the sadhana is actually to do that. So once you realize that who you are the supreme Brahman, then there's nothing else to do. Once you are there, you are there. Once Ganga Maya merges into Bay of Bengal, she's there. She's no more. No more. She may go back as a cloud again, and again go into the Himalayas and become the snow, and again melt, and again start moving back to the Bay of Bengal. But finally, important thing is she merges. So once we all do our self-inquiry and quieten this mind and go to the silence within, then we will merge with that self. Once we merge with the Supreme Brahman, then we are in supreme happiness. So that's the reason for all these verses that Sri Krishna has written. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. We have the sharing now by Dr. Kalarani. Get this one.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. அருணாச்சலமென அகமே நினைப்பவர் அகத்தை வேறறுப்பாய் அருணாச்சல. Namo Ramana to all. We are meditating on the Dhyana Patta given to us by Sadhu Om Swami. In the last satsang we learned, when we realize the presence of God in each and every learning, that learning disappears and God alone provides. One devotee said, Bhagwan, I am not able to understand the meaning of the verses in Ulladu Naarpadu. What am I to do? Bhagwan said, why do you worry about that? Just keep on reading it repeatedly. A stage will come, the words will disappear, and you will realize its essence only. That is why Sadhu Swami also says, Karkum Kalvi Palavidam, Kadavul Kalvi Mudalidam. There may be so many things to learn, but give the first importance to know God. Because he says, Nachirappu Yavinum Jnana Nishtai Mudalidam. There may be so many virtues that a man may have. He may be a very talented person. He may be able to solve any problem in the world, whether it is his problem or others. He may be a genius, capable of answering all questions asked in various subjects. He may be an Ashtavadani. He may be a very generous being, like Karna, who can part with anything that are asked in Yachakam. He may be a Veda Virpannar, who can chant all Vedas, mantras, japas, like Kavya Kanta Ganapati Muni before coming to Bhagwan. He can be a renounced person like Patinatar.
Here I would like to say something about Pattinathar. Pattinathar was considered to be a very great person in South who renounced everything. He has actually a very big businessman and was the richest person of his land. With God's grace, he realized that nothing is going to come with him after his death. So he renounced everything, and one day he was laying on the agricultural field with his hand folded, giving support to his head. Two ladies passing that way to fetch some water saw him. One of them said, "Somebody was telling that he was the most renounced person. He has renounced still attachments." The lady said, no, don't say like that. He is a very great renouncer. Pattinathar, on hearing this, took off his hand and was laying down without any support. When the two ladies came back after fetching water, they saw him, and the second lady said, "See, he is really a renounced one. He has taken off his support to his head." The first lady said, "Oh God, believe me, I cannot accept him as a renounced one. But why? He has taken off his hand and he is laying down without any support. Why don't you accept?" No, he is still having worldly attachments because he still hears what all people are talking about him. He is still paying attention to what I said. And because of that, he has removed his hands. I'm sure he has still more attachments. That is why Sadhuvam says, "Narchirappu yavinum." Out of all the virtues, glories, fame, precious ones, etc., paying attention to self is the greatest one. Jnana nishtai mudalidam. Because in all these virtues and greatness, there is selfishness and there is individuality. See, when a person is rich, he feels proud of himself. All right, let us imagine he himself is a very generous person. He helps the poor and does lot of social services. Then also, he feels proud of himself. Okay. He says he is not proud at all. He doesn't feel proud. He is getting some sort of satisfaction in helping the poor. And further, he says, by doing so, I don't want anything. My children's life will be good. That is why I am doing. So there is some expectation. It is said, even a mother has an expectation while she is bringing up her child. She expects that her son will look after her when he becomes old. That is why when Nayanar refers to Shiva, they say, "Thayinum sala parinde." God's compassion is more than the mother's. So, as Sadhuvam says, out of all greatness in the world, the greatest thing is to pay attention to the self. For that, give first place, first preference to complete devotion to Jnana. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana.
Our next sharing is by Ujjwal Jagadish.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. We are meditating on the verses of Ramana Chattvarimshat by Ganapati Muni, compiled by Ramana Maharshi, sent by Sri Ramana Maharshi. Jataram samaye paripurayata katinam vratamadritate charata. Jataram samaye paripurayata कठिनं व्रतमद्रितटे चरता जशकेतन शस्त्रदुरापहृदा कृषिमात्मविबोध विधौ धदता उदरवसमयಕ್ಕೆ ಪರಿಪೋಷಿಸುವ ಕಠಿಣ ವ್ರತವಗಿರಿ ತಟದಿ ಆಚರಿಸುವ ಸುಮಶರಣ ಶಸ್ತ್ರಕ್ಕೆ ಸೋಕದ ಹೃದಯ ಆತ್ಮಜ್ಞಾನ ಕೃಷಿಗೆ ಸಲಹುವ ಸದಯ ಉದರವ ಸಮಯಕ್ಕೆ ಪರಿಪೋಷಿಸುವ ಕಠಿಣ ವ್ರತವಗಿರಿ ತಟದಿ ಆಚರಿಸುವ. Ganapati Muni says, Ramana is the one who takes care of the need of the stomach. And he, staying at the slope of Arunachala, he is undergoing austere penance. Katina Vrata, he is undergoing. And in the presence of Ramana, Ramana used to say that when there is food, it is Dwadashi, and when there is no food, it is Ekadashi. It is the 11th day of every month that it is in the Hindu tradition that they do fasting on that day, on Ekadashi. On Dwadashi, there is a feast that is had. So when Ramana used to get good Bhiksha at Virupaksha cave, they used to share and they used to say, today is Dwadashi, we have got enough to eat. And when there was no food, they used to say, today is Ekadashi. And T.K. Sundaresh Iyer remembers one incident which happened at Virupaksha cave. At Virupaksha cave, once about 30 people were at Virupaksha cave and they could not go away from Virupaksha cave because it was raining very heavily that evening. So they all had to stay back that night in the Virupaksha cave itself. And the devotees came and told Bhagwan, there is no enough food for all the 30 of the devotees who are here. We only have food for only 2 or 3 people. So Ramana told, don't worry, mix it, make it into a paste and pour a lot of water into it and give everyone a cup of it. And that's listening to the instructions given by Bhagavan. It was equally shared how Bhagavan told. And T.K. Sundaresh Iyer reports that as soon as they had this small morsel of food, everybody's stomach was full. And he remembers an incident from Mahabharata, just like how Krishna from the Akshaya Patra, which was just washed by Draupadi, he just took one small piece of rice, and when he ate, everybody, the whole universe, everybody in the universe, their stomach was full, just like that. Everybody's stomach was full. The need of the stomach was taken care. And we see in the Ramana's life that Ramana, whoever devotee came to Bhagavan Ramana's presence, Ramana's first sentence was, have you had food? Please go and have food at the dining hall. And they were instructed to go to the dining hall and have their food. Everyone who came was served first, and then their spiritual questions were addressed. We also know that in the story, in the verse written by Avayar complains that it is, oh stomach, it is very difficult to stay with you, because whenever there is enough food, you don't eat. You say enough, I am full. Okay, when there is no food, you keep asking for more food. And Avayar complains to the stomach, saying that, oh stomach, living with you is very, very difficult. As a reply to this, as a contrary answer, Bhagavan Ramana takes the support, helps the stomach's party, and he says, he writes a reply from the stomach, and the stomach says, oh ego, oh manas, oh mind, it is very difficult to stay with you. When I say enough, you keep gulping more and more, say have, and you're filling me. When I'm actually hungry, when I'm asking for food, you don't give me food. Oh mind, it is very difficult to stay with you, says Ramana's reply of the stomach. So Ramana he understands the role of the stomach, and he provides whatever is required for fulfilling our daily needs. He takes care of the stomach. And we are very, very fortunate that Ramana has blessed us with eternal Dwadashi, because we have enough to eat. every moment of time, even when there is lockdown, even when others in the world are suffering with hunger, Ramana has been providing us with whatever is required for the stomach. And for what? For helping us to attain the supreme purpose of our human life, to help us attain and help us undergo this great krishi of Atma Jnana, of attaining Atma Jnana. He is helping. And this same idea has been shared by Muruganar Swami also in his first song, Deshika Padigam, which he writes. ಹಿರಿಯ ದೇವತೆಗಳಿಬ್ಬರಿಗೂ ಮೇಲಿನ ನೆಲೆ ನೀ ಗುರು ತೊರೆದೆ ಮನುಜನಾಗಿ ಈ ತುಂಡು ಬಟ್ಟೆಯನು ಟೊಂಕಕ್ಕೆ ಸುತ್ತಿ ಮೆರೆದೆ ನಿನ್ನ ಭಕ್ತರನು ಜನನ ಮರಣದಿಂ ಕಾಪಾಡುವ ವ್ರತ ತಳೆದೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆಂದೇ ಈ ಅರುಣಾಚಲದಲ್ಲಿ ತಪೋ ವೈಭವಕ್ಕೆ ಮೆರೆದೆ ಓ ರಮಣ ಮಹದೇವ to save us from the cycle of birth and death and to bless us with the supreme knowledge. Ramana underwent this great austere penance at the slope of Arunachala hill, says Muruganar Swami in this one, and also Ganapati Muni in Ramana Chatvarimshat. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to you, O Ramana, who shine as the self in all beings. Bhagavan Ramana, as Ujjwal is saying, underwent austerities. The great ones undergo austerities so that we may live in comfort. It is said of Holy Mother Sharda Devi that she did what is called the Panchagni Tapas. The Panchagni Tapas is sitting in the midst of 5 fires, 4 fires all around in each direction and one on top, which is the sun. So the Panchagni Tapas, and it was very, very difficult, and her body was becoming shriveled and blackened. Then the devotees asked her, Mother, for you, why this tapas? And she said, all the children of the order, they're all going to come. It will not be possible for them to do this tapas. I am finishing this tapas for them. So we see Bhagavan, as again as Ujjwal said, that he sees to it that our stomachs are full. In every way, Aksharamana Malai is given to us. As Bhagavan said, Aksharamana Malai has filled our stomach, has fed us for long and well, Bhagavan said. So Aksharamana Malai feeds us. Feeds us means in which way? Feeds us in every way. Physical food, food for the mind, that is good satsanga, is singing his name, being able to talk about him, people being able to listen to his glory, being able to chant his name, being able to see his form. All this is the best food for the mind. He gives the best food for the mind. And finally, the jnana, which Adi Shankara says, jnana vairagya siddhyartam bhikshan dehi cha Parvati. So, oh Parvati, Annapurna, this is the bhiksha that I want. So that is how Bhagavan feeds us, as Ujjwal said, at the right time. So far as he was concerned, he would eat whenever there was food forthcoming. He was asked, in Patalingam, who gave you food, Bhagavan? Who gave you food in Gurumurtam? What happened in the temple, in other places when you were there? What was the source of food? And then Bhagavan said, yes, food was forthcoming, but when there is no tenant, rent does not have to be paid. When there is no sense that this body is I, This is the rent which we are paying for saying I am here, I am living here. When I feel I am living in the body, then I have to pay the rent for this body, which is food, says Bhagavan. But when the tenant is not there, what is the need to pay rent? Such is the moment to moment teaching which we get from his life. The Guru Ramana, the Guru manifest, Subramanya manifest as the Guru, says Vishwanatha Swami in the very opening shloka of Ramana Ashtotram. Om Mahasena Mahumshena Jata Sri Ramano Guruhu. So Jataha Mahasena Mahumshena Jataha. He is born as the effulgence of Mahasena, the one, the Subramanya, the destroyer of ignorance. And when ignorance is destroyed, what is it that shines? What is it that is revealed? The end of the Sura Samhara reveals the truth of Subramanya to Sura. Sura says that, oh, this division which I have made in my ego, this division is false. All divisions are false. When that ego is divided by the sphere of self-inquiry, when it is separated from its objective attachments, then it can no longer hold to thought, and then it surrenders to the self. And when it surrenders to the self, then what remains is the self alone. The sweetness of the self alone remains. And that is Ramana. What is the meaning of the word Ramana? The meaning of the word Ramana is the same as the meaning of the word Rama. That which is charming, that which is beautiful is Ramana. That which is dear to everyone is Ramana. That which is beloved is Ramana. The beloved is called Ramana. In Kannada also the beloved is called Ramana, and in Sanskrit also the beloved is called Ramana. When I was meditating long back upon the word Ramana, because when we had, after a few years after it started the Ramana way, and it was just, at that time it was called only Ramana, and the Ramana journal, and in one of the editorials I was meditating upon the meaning. So I was asking different people, what is the meaning of the word Ramana? At that time I did not know it is the same as the word Rama. And I came to know then that Ramana means that which is dear, dear to all. And when I came to know that, I remembered one of the letters which Vishwanatha Swami had written to me. He had said, he had quoted in that, the way one should be detached from all the apparently beautiful and apparently wonderful supports that are available to us in life, and pluses and minuses which come along with all this. And he quoted to me the verse from Bhagavatam by the dancing girl, the dancing lady, the courtesan Pingala. Pingala, he said, Pingala, the courtesan, she was waiting for somebody to come, and she would spend the night with him. Anybody could come. But in those days, they would spend the night with one person. Even till Arunagirinath's time, these courtesans also had a strict law of dharma by which they lived. And so she was waiting. That was her food. You see, that was her sustenance. And she was waiting. It could have been a prince, it could have been a merchant. Somebody would come to her doorstep. And she was waiting at her doorstep, and it is said that she was holding the threshold and looking out into the lane expecting somebody to come, hoping that somebody would come, waiting for somebody to come. And because that she believes is her sustenance. Just as we all believe that every thought, every action is our sustenance. We believe that by acting we will get fruits, and by that we will be able to sustain ourselves. That is our belief. So she too believed, and she did not realize even the passing of time. She was so intent on waiting for somebody to come that she had stood there holding the threshold. The whole night she had stood there, but no one came. And in the morning, suddenly in a flash, she said to herself, the inner voice, that inner Ramana within her, he said to her, you are waiting for this Ramana outside. I am here. You are waiting for the beloved outside. I am here. And she says, ignoring Ramana, ever shining within me, ignoring Ramana, ever shining within me, I am searching outside. I have been searching outside. In that moment, she is liberated. Her bonds to the external world get cut off in that intensity with which she was expecting, and that total disappointment which she had, and that turning within at that moment made her recognize this is Ramana. So at that point, she refers to the self as Ramana. This was one of the verses which Vishwanath Swami had sent to me, saying, pay attention to this Ramana within you. This is Ramana. Pay attention to the self who is shining ever as the beloved within you. So the point of the Mahasena, the revelation of the Shakti of the Guru, when the Guru strikes down the ego, he reveals himself as the beloved, as the dearest of the dear. And in Who Am I, Bhagavan points out to Shiva Prakasham Pillai that everyone is in love with himself or herself. In PhD, Ambika Kameshwar will say that for each one of us, we are the hero or the heroine of our story. We are the central figure. So Bhagavan says everyone is in love with himself or herself. Why is it so? It is because of the love for the self. That is dear, and that is because it is of the nature of bliss. So Ramana is bliss. Bliss is revealed. Love is revealed. So that Mahasena, that powerful one who, as Bhagavan says in Aksharamanamale, Ahattai ver arupai arunachala, you destroy the ego. So can one say that one who is such a destroyer like Arunachala, and again in another verse he says, Uyir Koli. Uyir Koli he is. Arunachala, he is absolutely a killer, I tell you, he says. If you just think of him but once, he'll finish you off. So, is it possible that such a one can be dear? But he is dear, says Vishwanatha Swami. He is Mahasena, but he is Ramana. He is the dearest of the dear. That's why it is said that when Rama was born and Dasharatha asked Vashishta what should be his name, how should we name him? And Vashishta, the sage, the Rajaguru, and the great Jnani, he said, all the sages revel in him, so call him Rama. That in which all the sages revel. That in which all the sages revel. What is that? That is the self. That is Ramana. And Ramana also means light. Ra, this was revealed to me by Adiyannamale Shastrigal, the word Ramana, Ra means the sun, Na is the moon, and Ma is fire. So it is all light. And we know that Shiva's three eyes are the light. Shiva's three eyes are the sun, the moon, and fire. In the story of Arunachala, of Ardhanarishwara, we find that mother had closed the eyes of Shiva in play, drowning the entire universes in untimely darkness. And to atone for that, she had come down to earth as Annapurna, as Kamakshi, and then as Apita Kuchambika, wherein she got united with Shiva. So these three eyes of Shiva, the three aspects of light in their union became actually Skanda, the Subramanya, the power of Subramanya, and this is Ramana. So that Mahasena was born as Ramana. He was the very embodiment of the self. So we see in Bhagavan everything that we can see inside, if we turn to the self, is visible in him, in his eyes, in his form. The self radiates terrifically, says Humphreys. The self, that light, radiates terrifically to us, and that love just floods our life. That dearness floods our life and fills us with love within and without, and that in turn manifests as the joy. That is Ramana. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. We now have the chanting of Aksharamanamale verses by Srimati Radha and Vallabh.
Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala. கோபமில் குணத்தோய் புரியா என்னை கொள்ள கூரையன் செய்தேன் அருணாச்சலா. கௌதமர் போற்றும் கருணை மாமலையே கடை கணித்தாழ்வாய் அருணாச்சலா. சகலமும் விழுங்கும் கதிரொளி இனமன ஜலஜமலர் தீடருணாச்சலா. சாப்பாடுன்னை சார்ந்துணவாயான் சாந்தமாய் போவன் அருணாச்சலா. சித்தம் குளிர கதிரஸ்தம் வைத்த முதவையை திர அருள்மதி அருணாச்சலா. சீரை அழித்து நிர்வாணம செய்தருள் சீரை அழித்தருள் அருணாச்சலா. சுக கடல் பொங்க சொல்லுணர் வழங்க சும்மா பொருந்திடங்க அருணாச்சலா. சோது செய்தென்னை சோதிய இனி உன் ஜோதி ஒரு காட்டருணாச்சலா. செப்படி வித்தை கற்றிப்படி மயக்க விட்டுருபடி வித்தை காட்டருணாச்சலா. சேராயனின்மை நீராயுருகி கண்ணீராற்றழிவேன் அருணாச்சலா. செய்யன தள்ளில் செய்வினை சுடுமலர் உய்வகையே துரை அருணாச்சலா. சொல்லாது சொல்லி நீ சொல்லரனில் என்று சும்மா இருந்தாய் அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ 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 அருணாச்சலா.
अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल अरुणाचलं வாழி அன்பர்களும் வாழி அக்ஷரமண மாலை வாழி.
Namo Ramana. We conclude the satsang with Ashtotra Puja to Bhagavan performed at Subramaniam's altar. The first part will be chanted by Vaibhavji and Prarthana, and the second part by Ashwini and Uma.
नमो रमण भारद्वाज विश्वनाथ विरचितं श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तर शतनामावलिः अपार सच्चेत् सुखवारिराशे यस्योमि मात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरं चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि। ॐ महासेन महोंशेन जाताय नमः। ॐ श्रीरमणाय नमः। ॐ गुरवे नमः। ॐ अखण्डसंविदाकाराय नमः। ॐ महौजसे नमः। ॐ कारणोद्भवाय नमः। ॐ जगद्दितावताराय नमः। ॐ श्रीभूमिनाथस्थलोत्थिताय नमः। ॐ पराशरकुलोत्तंसाय नमः। ॐ सुन्दरार्यतपःफलाय नमः। ॐ कमनीयसुचारित्राय नमः। ॐ सहायाम्बा सहायवते नमः। ॐ शोणाचलमहोलीनमानसाय नमः। ॐ स्वर्णहस्तकाय नमः। ॐ श्रीमद्वादशान्तमहास्थले लब्धविद्योदयाय नमः। ॐ महाशक्तिनिपातेन प्रबुद्धाय नमः। ॐ परमार्थविदे नमः। ॐ तीव्राय नमः। ॐ पितृपदान्वेषिणे नमः। ॐ इन्दुमौळिना पितृमते नमः। ॐ पितुरादेशतः शोणशैलं प्राप्ताय नमः। ॐ तपोमयाय नमः। ॐ उदासीनाय नमः। ॐ महायोगिने नमः। ॐ महोत्साहाय नमः। ॐ कुशाग्रदिये नमः। ॐ शान्तसङ्कल्पसंरम्भाय नमः। ॐ सुसन्द्रशे नमः। ॐ सवित्रे नमः। ॐ स्थिराय नमः। ॐ तपक्षपितसर्वाङ्गाय नमः। ॐ पुल्लाम्बुजविलोचनाय नमः। ॐ चन्द्रिकासितहासश्रीमण्डिताननमण्डलाय नमः। ॐ चूतवाट्यां समासीनाय नमः। ॐ चूर्णिताखिलविभ्रमाय नमः। ॐ वेदवेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञाय नमः। ॐ चिन्मुद्रिणे नमः। ॐ त्रिगुणातीताय नमः। ॐ विरूपाक्षगुहावासाय नमः। ॐ विराजदचलाकृतये नमः। ॐ उद्दीप्तनयनाय नमः। ॐ पूर्णाय नमः। ॐ रचिताचलताण्डवाय नमः। ॐ गम्भीराय नमः। ॐ परमाचार्याय नमः। ॐ सुप्रसन्नाय नमः। ॐ अभयप्रदाय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणास्य निभाय नमः। ॐ धीराय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणाभिमुखाय नमः। ॐ स्वराजे नमः। ॐ महर्षये नमः। ॐ भगवते नमः। ॐ ईड्याय नमः।
ॐ भूमविद्याविशारदाय नमः। ॐ विमलाय नमः। ॐ दीर्घदर्शिने नमः। ॐ आप्ताय नमः। ॐ ऋजुमार्गप्रदर्शकाय नमः। ॐ समदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्यदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्याय नमः। ॐ प्रशान्ताय नमः। ॐ अमितविक्रमाय नमः। ॐ सुकुमाराय नमः। ॐ सदानन्दाय नमः। ॐ मृदुभाषिणे नमः। ॐ दयार्णवाय नमः। ॐ श्री शोणाचल हृद्भूत स्कन्दाश्रमनिकेतनाय नमः। ॐ सद्दर्शनोपदेष्ट्रे नमः। ॐ सद्भक्तवृन्द परिवृताय नमः। ॐ गणेशमुनिभृङ्गेन सेविताङ्घ्रि सरोरुहाय नमः। ॐ गीतोपदेशसारादिग्रन्थ संचिन्न संशयाय नमः। ॐ वर्णाश्रममतातीताय नमः। ॐ रसज्ञाय नमः। ॐ सौम्याय नमः। ॐ आत्मवते नमः। ॐ सर्वावलिमतस्थानाम् आराध्याय नमः। ॐ सर्वसद्गुणिने नमः। ॐ आत्मारामाय नमः। ॐ महाभागाय नमः। ॐ मातृमुक्तिविधायकाय नमः। ॐ विनताय नमः। ॐ विनुताय नमः। ॐ विप्राय नमः। ॐ मुनीन्द्राय नमः। ॐ पावकोज्ज्वलाय नमः। ॐ दर्शनादगसंहारिणे नमः। ॐ मौनेन स्वात्मबोधकाय नमः। ॐ ऋचान्तिकरसान्निध्याय नमः। ॐ स्मरणाद्बन्धमोचकाय नमः। ॐ अन्तस्तिमिरचण्डांशवे नमः। ॐ संसारार्णवतारकाय नमः। ॐ षोडाग्रीशस्तुतिद्रष्टे नमः। ॐ हार्दविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः। ॐ अविच्युतनिजप्रज्ञाय नमः। ॐ नैसर्गिकमहातपसे नमः। ॐ कमण्डलुधराय नमः। ॐ शुभ्रकौपीनवसनाय नमः। ॐ गुहाय नमः। ॐ दण्डपाणये नमः। ॐ कृपापूर्णाय नमः। ॐ भवरोगविषग्वराय नमः। ॐ स्कन्दाय नमः। ॐ देवतमाय नमः। ॐ अमर्त्याय नमः। ॐ सेनान्ये नमः। ॐ पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः।
ॐ श्रीरमण भगवते नमः। अष्टोत्तरनाम पूजां समर्पयामि। यस्थाणोररुणाचलस्य पदयोः स्मृत्या जनिं प्राप्यत दिव्यानुग्रहसुप्रवाहविवशस्तादात्म्यभावं गतः कृन्निष्ठस्वगभीरनित्यतपसा लोकान् पुनास्येकराट् तस्मै श्रीरमणाय ते नम इदं लोकोत्तरज्योतिषे। नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि दरुशन सुख मंगल मुख सकल जीवहित सम्मुख ब्रह्म संघिये नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि सदा तुष्ट सदा हृष्ट सदा शिवानंद पुष्ट परम महर्षि ब्रह्मनिष्ठ समदर्शी नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि ನಮ್ಮ ಮನವದೊಂದು ಕಾಡು ನೀನರಿತಿಹೆ ಅದರ ಜಾಡು ಹಿತವನರಿತು ನೀಡುತ್ತೆಮ್ಮ ಕೊರೆಯ ತಣಿಸಲೈ ಬೇಡಲೆಂದು ಬಂದ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿಯೇ ತಣಿವೆವಯ್ಯ ಮೂಡಿಗಾರನೇ ಹಿತವ ನುಡಿದು ಪೊರೆ ನಮ್ಮನು ಬ್ರಹ್ಮ ಸಂಗಿಯೇ ನಮೋ 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 ರಮಣ ಸದಾಶಿವ ಪ್ರಭಾವರಣ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ ನಮೋ 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 ರಮಣ ಸದಾಶಿವ ಪ್ರಭಾವರಣ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ बोलो भगवान श्री रमण महर्षि की
जय
Namo Ramana.